Let's talk about the attack, though, right? So the attack last night into this morning from the Trump team onto Kamala is very focused on her being a phony and a flip-flopper, okay? Do you guys think that that's the most effective attack on her, right? That she flip-flops on issues? I mean, Roma brought up fracking, right? Minnesota Freedom Fund, I want to let these Black Lives Matter folks out of jail, but I'm tough on crime. I mean, she is a phony person. Well, I don't think there's any question about that. Is that a good line of attack, though?
It's all about what she has flip-flopped from, pointing back to what she has said and then asking her, if you are so far left in your progressive ideology that you're saying that we need to eliminate energy jobs, we need to stop red meat consumption, we need to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal, what has changed between you running in 2020 for the nomination and 2024 that is going to make us believe that you're actually legitimate in these issues? You accepted the mantle of the most liberal senator in the United States of America back then because you were trying to run to the left of your party. Why are you now suddenly trying to change that tune over the campaign trail to try to appeal to the American people? It's basically calling her out as a liar, number one. And number two, it is reminding the American people of the radical liberal senator that she was. So perhaps it's not necessarily the fact that she flip-flopped, but rather reminding the American people of what she flipped from, what she was saying that we needed to advocate for, what she was saying we needed to try to implement into political policy, and now reminding the American people of those things that she said to basically say you're either a liar or you are trying to shift right now to cover up all the things you said back in the day.
Yeah, and if I could just quickly jump on the end of that, I think what Luke mentioned is perfect. It's not just about what she said, it's about what she did. And the Biden-Harris administration, it's not just the Biden administration, it's the Biden-Harris administration. So anything that they have done over the last 3.5 years, she needs to be held accountable for. If she said something different than what they did, tell us why. And what are you going to do differently in the future? I mean, that's with honesty that the American people deserve, and they're not getting it from this administration.
Yeah, to put that in terms of pronouns, it's not his agenda, it's their agenda. And I think that's absolutely right. I mean, no, seriously though.
That's hers.
I gotta use words that they can identify with. But it's their agenda. It's not his agenda. And we need to, but let me just ask you this, like, Tim, let me reframe this. Is it better to attack her as a phony that flip-flops? So you've been on both sides of fracking, or is it better to attack her on policy straight up? You're anti-fracking.
I think the phoniness works. You got to remember, the Republicans know who they're voting for. The Democrats know who they're voting for. And I think that the problem you have with voters in the middle is they don't always have policy ideas. And they'll say, I vote for the man or the woman and not the party. So I think if you do undermine her as, gosh, she's kind of a phony, she's a chameleon, Kamala chameleon, that's something that needs to be pushed out there. So that can't hurt. But also, all the things they don't want you to talk about, like her cackling at weird times. There's a bunch of these things about her personality.
That's racist and sexist that you said that.
Yeah. Well, everything critical you say of her is apparently racist and sexist. That's why they love that she is running. But I think, obviously, here, the fact that she's not doing any media shows they're just as afraid of her in these interviews and debates as they were afraid for Biden.
I feel like we've got to hone that message in, though. We've got to pick one thing and go straight at it, because I felt like the last week was very scattershot when it came to how we're going to message against her. Luke, I mean, where do you come down on the phony flip-flopper versus the laser focused on how extreme and dangerous her issues are?
Yeah, it might have felt a little messy. We were resetting the Monopoly board. We were trying to get all of our pieces in play to make sure that we understood what the attack was. You got to also remember, all of the firepower politically has gone against Joe Biden and his record over the last few years. It is true that it is the Biden-Harris ticket, but you also have to make sure that you are attacking Kamala on the specific things that she has done and said over the last little bit. So there need to be polls in the field. There need to be polling of swing state voters, of independents, to figure out like what issues they're most important important on and how Kamala has addressed them in the past. So I think that the messaging is going to get tighter within the next week or so. I think that she has experienced this honeymoon bump. That was a period of time where the Republicans just simply weren't going to win for a few days as she rode this high, because there's not any message that was necessarily going to get through this historical switch that the Democrats had on their ticket. But as that fades away, you've got, although it is short in the time span of this has been the longest campaign in history, or the general campaign in history, 3 months is an eternity when it comes to having to redefine people, and just look no further than October surprises that have happened over the last few election cycles. So I think that as the Republicans tighten their message and figure out what exactly works, the arguments are going to be compelling against their opponent. And they're going to be reminded that this might be some energy right at the beginning, but it's also compounded by the fact that a lot of the people that are showing up to her, like Atlanta rally, weren't there for Kamala. They were there for Megan Thee Stallion or whatever, for a free concert, and then left out of the parking lot as Kamala took the stage. So as the messaging gets tighter, then we're going to see what actually works in the polls leading up to that. The testing is going to be vetted thoroughly, and they're going to make sure that they know exactly what the issues that the voters are thinking about is going to resonate in November.
Yeah, I think that's important, that we make sure that we know. And it's funny, someone asked me this morning after yesterday, very left, said, "Is the race over?" I go, "Have you paid attention the last couple of weeks? The guy got attempted assassination. The court ruled in his favor on immunity. I mean, boom, 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 boom. I think you couldn't make up what happened the last 20 days, politically speaking. And now you want to know if it's over? Holy smokes. We got 97 days to go." Roma, the thing that I find fascinating about the attacks coming inbound from them, and you saw it yesterday with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, to the extent that he has talked about it, has brought it up. They're talking about Project 2025, this Heritage Foundation think tank group of people that are coming up with policies. Okay. I feel like, wow, if that's what you got, you're literally going after a think tank on the right saying you guys are coming up with issues that's what you do. You're a think tank, and trying to associate him with Trump, who's denied being that's the best you got. I'm going, okay.
Right, exactly. The best you got is attacking a think tank for doing what their job is to do. One that has no affiliation with the president, as he said repeatedly. So it's so weak. I mean, they are flailing already. It's only going to get worse over the next 96 days. And frankly, the more that we talk about her record, the more they're going to have to defend themselves, which means they can't be talking about us and spreading more lies like they love to do. So let's talk about the fact that Kamala Harris herself said that she was the last person in the room when Biden made the call to pull us out of Afghanistan.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
Her video can be replayed over and over and over. And by the way, she does chuckle at the end of it, as she loves to do. She likes to laugh off very serious issues like pulling our troops out of Afghanistan and having people hang off of the side of an airplane getting stuck there. I mean, she is responsible for these things. And we cannot let the American people forget that she was she was the partner in the lead cover-up that we just saw unveil on the debate stage, right? So if we're going to talk about all of the things that she's done, she has hid Joe Biden's cognitive decline from the American people. That's the number one thing that I think of when I think of Kamala Harris. The fact that she lied every single time she was asked about her running mate. She lied every single time. She said he's smart as ever. He's quick on his feet. He's always in the game. I mean, some of the things she says, I don't even know what they mean, frankly. To take a page out of President Trump's talking points there, he didn't know what Joe Biden meant. I don't understand half the things Kamala says. I mean, she really is just flailing half the time. So the more we can talk about her record, the more they have to defend it. And then we can bring to light all of the lies that people have been told over the years.
Out of Politico this morning, we got a brand new polling from Public Opinion Strategies, which is a Republican polling outfit. Let me tell you what it is. 5 battleground states. Kamala Harris, 48, Trump, 45 in Pennsylvania right now. before we even talk about VPs. Wisconsin, Harris 48, Trump 46. Arizona, Trump 48, Harris 43. Nevada, Trump 46, Harris 45. Michigan, 45 apiece. Tim, I get the sugar high, the honeymoon. Does this, I mean, the race has tightened in the battleground states. There's no question about it. I think when we removed Joe Biden, his fitness for office issue from the table, which is what most Democrats are concerned about, the race tightened. I don't think that's a shock. But does it stop there? I mean, she's got a VP pick and a convention coming up, which should kind of give her a little bump each time. Are you concerned?
Sure, but once again, they're probably going to be afraid of her being scrutinized. What does she say in interviews and press conferences? Even what does her speech say? You know, I think all of these things are grist for the Republican machine. You know, they can message on everything she has to say. You know, the issue they really haven't touched is this bail fund. You know, the fact checkers now have tried to say, oh, she didn't do this. I think that's the kind of issue that you can expect Trump to go for, is to say, excuse me, when you start talking about January 6th, and he really could have done it yesterday.
Oh, that would have been great.
Kamala's for bailing out rioters, so I don't know what you're trying to.
Oh God, Tim Graham, I hope they're watching. I know that. Well, I used to call it the Biden campaign. We've seen how many clips the Biden campaign of this show has put up. I hope the Trump people. That's a brilliant strategy. I think they should, every time they talk about January 6th and what you call them, say really, because here's the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Here's her talking about bailing out people that did all these destructive things. Oh my gosh, another home run, Tim Graham.
Well, they've never wanted you to associate January 6 riots with post-George Floyd riots or Ferguson riots or other racial riots. The media glamorizes those. They call them rebellions and reckonings. NPR endorses a book called In Defense of Looting. That's who these people are. So that's where every time they start lecturing about January 6th, you got to go hard back at them.
I love that. I love that. Luke, does the polling concern you now, or do you think it's still just a sugar high?
It has tightened, but again, the Republicans have not had an opportunity to define Kamala Harris. I think that as things settle down over the next few weeks, Democrats are going to realize that they're probably just celebrating a statistical tie. And in a lot of the battleground states, things are not going to shake out in the direction that they want them to go. I'm interested to see who the vice presidential candidate is, but on issues like Tim was just talking about with the Minnesota Freedom Fund, people need to be reminded of the things that she stood for. They need to be seeing the entire tweet that she put out saying that we need to support these people on the ground bailing folks out. To the Minnesota Freedom Fund issue, I think that's one of the greatest and most compelling arguments, because Donald Trump put out a video just a few days ago showing all of the people that have been released by the fund but then went on to commit other crimes, including aggravated assault. I think one of them was arrested on kidnapping and assault and then was released by the fund. The head of the fund said he doesn't even look at the charge before he bails somebody out. That is her record. It is lawlessness. It is an abdication of law and order. Then go down and start talking about the border czar. And I love how the research center has put out the clips that are side by side of one media outlet saying she is the border czar, and then a couple years later saying she was never the border czar, with the same chyron or the same outlet name on the video clip. The double back and forth there is just brilliant.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
If you can let the border czar thing percolate, tie it to the law and order issue, and point back to the fact that she was the one who was on the top of the ticket when we had this abysmal economy that is not hitting Americans the correct way, I think those are going to be compelling arguments. And at the end of the day, folks are going to see when they go into the voting booth that they're not doing as well as they were now and they were under Donald Trump. And James Carville said it best: you can't give the American people stats and numbers and tell them the economy is doing better. They have to actually feel that. And so maybe once the sugar high fades away, they're going to start to look at the realities of what this economy has actually delivered for them.
I think the MRC, I said this before, but the brilliance of it was John Carl at ABC saying Republicans are falsely accusing of her of being the border czar. And then there's a clip of ABC News saying Kamala Harris, who's the border czar. The complicity of these guys and covering up for her shows no bounds.
And you got to ask, are you lying now or were you lying then? Which one is it?
It underlines that Kamala never wanted the job. She thought that was, a bucket of warm spit. She didn't want it. So she's going around to reporters going, I didn't want to be border czar. I wasn't the border czar.
She didn't want to be vice president to Joe Biden. Let's go that far. I mean, she called him a racist on the debate stage, and I think she meant it. I mean, it might be the only honest thing she ever said.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.